In this lecture we are going to analyze a short trade in the Canadian dollar 5-minute timeframe. This is a relatively simple trade with the use of the wash line, and rather simple notions about pure price action reading like the inside candle. Without further ado, let's jump right into the analysis to see how all the elements of the manipulation took place in this particular example. Notice also how manipulations occur pretty much in the same way in all timeframes. From number 1 to number 5, we can see price making higher highs and higher lows in what appears to be the major flow. Here we have to make a quick pause to give this part of the analysis its due respect. You probably already observed that I always start any analysis, regardless of the method being used, with the simple counting of major and minor highs and lows. This should be the starting point of any good market analysis. The numbers I marked on the chart represent the market extremes that fall into the major flow category under my own subjective judgment. That means that not all traders will completely agree with the numbers you see in the chart. For example, if we take a look at the market vector between 5 and 6, you will notice that there is a high and a low in the middle that could very well fit the major flow category. However, that would only be the case if that high and low were to be analyzed individually. If you place them in context with the surrounding volatility and the previous highs and lows since number 1, we can assume this node in price can be categorized under the minor flow. The main reason for that is the increase in volatility after high number 5. If volatility increases, then both major and minor flows will naturally increase as well. As I said previously, not all traders will agree with this analysis because this sort of thing is completely subjective, which does not mean it is wrong. Every type of analysis will lead to right and wrong answers eventually, so don't worry too much about that. With that said, let's go back to the beginning of the analysis. Observe that high number 3 surpassed the high number 1, and this rendered the low number 2 as a solid market structure. Let's take a moment to dig under that statement to see what it truly means. When a high surpasses another high, it means that buyers were strong enough to produce that effect, and it is useful to track the origin of that movement, so we can use it later as some sort of axis to our analysis. The origin of the buyers who produced high number 3 is logically around the area of low number 2. This seems to be a perfectly reasonable assumption. That's an objective way of seeing price extremes, but there is also a subjective way of doing that, and if you align both, you can arrive at a more precise idea of where exactly the buyers picked up the market. Observe that I drew a red rectangle, and its origin is at the lower tails of 2 candles that happened right after low number 2. According to my own subjective interpretation, this is the exact moment where buyers picked the market up. It turns out that subjective interpretations also have to be logically justified. They are not some sort of mysterious and intuitive perception about the market because that would be completely useless. Observe that I marked 2 upward green arrows near low number 2. That marks 2 candles with unusually long lower tails. This is an indication of buying pressure around that area, and it can be considered the moment wherein buyers took control to produce high number 3. We can verify that was the case by seeing what happened in number 4 when price comes back precisely to the area inside the red rectangle, and then reverses again to produce another vector upwards. All of this means that we are dealing with an upward trend, but as you can clearly notice by the length of my commentary, it's not so simple as counting highs and lows. There are all sorts of subjective conclusions one can make about the validity of such highs and lows in the chart. From number 1 to number 4, the market interpretation is fairly straightforward, but precisely at high number 5, an interesting phenomenon displays itself. The last significant high made by buyers was high number 3, so if buyers are going to prove themselves once again, they should in principle surpass that level with some degree of certainty. However, that's not what happens in high number 5. Notice that in high number 5, price pierces the high number 3 level as you can see by the black horizontal line, and it closes below that level. This is where the retail breakout traders got their buy orders triggered because all of them were waiting to go long when price surpassed that level. This notion was clearly amplified by the previous candle to number 5. Notice that it is a high volatility candle that serves as the von Restorff effect. This is the first leg of the market manipulation being successfully employed. Right after number 5, price begins to fall down, and both lows number 4 and number 2 are broken. What causes this is the reverse psychology and bandwagon effect being applied in the retail traders. Once price starts to fall down after number 5, retail traders start to get their stop orders triggered, so they immediately start to look for ways to recuperate that. The way they do this is by going short, which ends up helping the large traders' position to increase since they got short when the retail traders got long in the wash line. Once again, the mechanics of the manipulation is exactly the same. People get excited to trade in one direction, then they get disappointed, and then they tend to plan their revenge, which is something that only helps the market makers in the end. The wash line you can see in the chart represents the level in which retail traders were misled by the large traders, hence the rather cynical name of the line. In other words, that was the level where the retail traders were washed out of their positions. The aftermath of the manipulation is that this wash line can still be used in the future because it is a significant market level that the market tends to respect, especially when large traders still influence it to some degree. The market vector between numbers 5 and 6 is the absolute and undeniable proof that buyers are no longer dominant in this market. The advantage is that now we have a wash line and a solid market structure in high number 5 to count on if we want to short this market around that area. However, this notion alone is usually not enough. We have to wait for other cues to place a trade as a matter of caution. The final cues we have for the short position you see on the chart happen between numbers 6 and 7, and precisely at number 7 as well. Observe that from point 6 onwards, price begins to rise in a suspiciously organized manner for a chaotic system. This means large traders are still playing games in this market, and they are certainly going to respect the level they created themselves, which is the wash line. The final cue is candle number 7, which is an inside candle that happened right after price met the wash line. For all intents and purposes, an inside candle means a temporary stop, which can mean it is time to get in the market. If we ally that to the notion that large traders are still influencing the market, and the fact that all of this is happening very near our wash line, we have a trade opportunity in our hands. The short trade you see here was triggered at the open of the candle right next to candle number 7 with a stop above high number 5, and a target at the low number 6. The stop is based on the assumption that if we are correct, the large traders will bring the market down from the wash line, and that little spike in high number 5 gives us a small safety range. The target is based on the assumption that if sellers were able to produce low number 6, they will be able to produce that range again. Let's see how the market develops. As you can see here, our reading of the market manipulation was correct, and our target ended up being hit successfully.